The death of Uranus and Neptune is one of Sailor Moon's most iconic episodes, and for good reason. For many people, it embodies everything they love about the characters. Their mature attitudes, complex morality, and of course, their love for one another. It's a great episode, and one that gets talked about a lot in the fandom as a result. Their second death episode? Less iconic and more divisive than anything. While Death of Uranus and Neptune highlights everything people love about the characters, the second death episode, Dying Stars, Uranus and Neptune's Last Stand, for many people embodies everything they hate about the characters. At the very least the 90s anime versions. Whenever there's anyone else really hate Haruka and Michiru in the anime post on the Sailor Moon subreddit, this episode is always referenced inevitably, which I do get. But the first thing that always comes to my mind is that's kind of why I love it. When Haruka and Michiru are introduced in S, they're basically a child's view of perfect adults. They're cool and mature. They're in a loving relationship. They're super sophisticated and rich. They can do whatever they want. They're incredibly confident. Half the time their mere presence causes beautiful music and flower petals. As Uranus and Neptune, they're basically what you'd expect protagonists of a magical girl show not aimed towards children to be. They're mysterious, not afraid to do some dirty work if it means saving the world, and they want the kids to stay out of their way because they can't handle the hard decisions and the need to make sacrifices. They're heavily conflicted on their duty, and the sacrifices they view as necessary weigh on them too. They're still kinda assholes, though. They see themselves as better than the inner Senshi, despite them having saved the world twice by S. They're standoffish and refuse to work with the others, even when they try to reach out, and aren't above using underhanded tactics to force them to comply. Ultimately, they see the inners as not being capable of making sacrifices to save the world. The irony being, the audience knows the inners have already sacrificed their lives to save the world by this point in the story. This all comes to a head with the issue of Hotaru. Haruka and Michiru see the Messiah of Silence as a death sentence for humanity. She needs to die for the good of everyone. The inners, on the other hand, believe there has to be another way than killing an innocent person who hasn't done anything wrong yet. If you gave the Senshi the trolley problem, Haruka and Michiru would probably throw the switch and then forever be haunted by the blood on their hands. The inners would try literally anything else to stop the trolley, even if it was ultimately unsuccessful. If the two groups were told they needed to throw 100 pure heart crystals into a volcano or the world was going to explode in a natural disaster or something, Haruka and Michiru would probably gather in 98, then throw their own in to finish it. The inners, again, would try literally anything else even if it failed. For Haruka and Michiru, saving the world means the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. For the inners, Usagi especially, saving the world means saving everyone, down to the very last individual. Even if they fail, they'd go down trying. Who's right and who's wrong? I don't know. I don't think anyone can really say objectively. There are actual, philosophical debates about this shit. I'm a VTuber running an anime channel. Regardless, at the end of the day, Sailor Moon is an optimistic show about love and the belief that the good in everyone will ultimately triumph in the end. So it's very important that at the end of S, Haruka and Michiru are proven wrong. They assume Hotaru needs to be killed because Sailor Saturn will destroy the world. But in the end, she's actually what saves it. Sailor Saturn's destructive capabilities are necessary to defeat Pharaoh 90. In a way, it was a bigger picture the pair didn't see. They were so confident in their own interpretations of Michiru's visions, they never considered that there could have been an alternative. It could be argued that if Usagi hadn't let things get as far as they did by trying to help Hotaru, Pharaoh 90 never would have been unleashed in the first place. But if they did succeed in killing Hotaru and another way to unleash Pharaoh 90 happened, the whole world would have been fucked. Ultimately, the ending of the season is about the pair acknowledging the inners can make tough decisions. And Super S, flawed as that season is, conceptually did try to follow up on that. The inners now play the role of the adults when the childish villains show up. Also worth noting, after Usagi lets Professor Tomoe and Hotaru live, no more villains die by the hands of the heroes in the series. Not counting Monsters of the Day and Super S, which is its own topic entirely. The Amazon Trio, the Amazoness Quartet, and thanks to the opening act of Stars, Nehelenia too, all get redeemed and given second chances. It's arguable whether this all is too optimistic. And unfortunately, it's certainly not realistic. But like I said, the power of love, the importance of believing in the good in others, and that both of those things triumph at the end of the day is the main theme of Sailor Moon. So I think it really fits. Speaking of said main theme, 5 minutes in, let's finally talk about Sailor Stars. After not appearing outside of a special and the movie in Super S, the Outer Senshi make their return in Stars. Haruka and Michiru are more willing to work with the others in this season, and they even adopt Hotaru alongside Setsuna early on. But old habits die hard. Haruka and Michiru see that the Inners can make tough calls when it comes down to it, but they still have a lot of their own flaws. The Outers in general are inherently distrustful of the Starlights, which is mutually shared with Taki and Yaiten in regards to the Senshi as a whole. Despite being willing to work with the others at points, like in the season's opening arc, we still often see Haruka and Michiru working alone. A recurring scene throughout the season is the pair sitting in their car together alone at night. The only episode Setsuna is active in, beyond just being alongside Haruka and Michiru for scenes where they're intimidating the Starlights and stuff, is also completely separate from the other two. The pair are more willing to work with others now, but in the end still view it as them against the world when push comes to shove. And in the episode prior to Dying Stars, push does come to shove. Usagi and the Starlights show back up where the Outers are hiding out, and Usagi is forced to face the fact that her friends are dead, and the Starlights believe there's no way to win against Galaxia now, admitting Kakyu was right and they should have worked with everyone while they still had the chance. Hotaru and Setsuna counter this, saying they still have hope and encouraging the others to do so as well. But Haruka and Michiru have already walked off after saying that as the Outer Senshi, this is their responsibility to deal with, not anyone else's. The Outers go to fight Galaxia, get their asses kicked. Hotaru decides she's going to blow up the planet to kill Galaxia, and then Galaxia just laughs and reveals she orchestrated Hotaru's reawakening in the first place just so she could steal her starseed. Galaxia then offers the Outers the opportunity to work for her, explaining to them how her starseed stealing bracelets work. Hotaru and Setsuna tell her to fuck off, but Haruka and Michiru accept. Galaxia orders them to kill the others. Setsuna and Hotaru say they're gonna fight with everything they've got. And after Haruka and Michiru get one hit, the other two say they're clearly very serious about this. And then they just let themselves get killed without putting up any sort of fight. While this is happening, the Starlights have finally decided to work with Usagi, going to fight once more despite their wounds. And they all show up just in time to see Setsuna and Hotaru dying. Before the pair fade, they encourage Usagi to have hope and faith. Eventually, after attacking Usagi and the Starlights for a while, Haruka and Michiru try to attack Galaxia to steal her starseed, revealing that this was their plan the whole time. But it doesn't work because Galaxia doesn't have a starseed and she kills them. As they're dying, Usagi, who had previously asked Haruka to give her any sign that things weren't how they seemed, asks why they did this, and they give their typical, "This is our burden, it is how we must fight" spiel, which is something Seiya had also said earlier in the season. And then Usagi tearfully admits that she lost faith in them, and actually thought they'd turned on everyone just to save their own asses. This whole sequence is incredibly controversial, but to me, this is the moment that makes Haruka and Michiru's whole story work, and why I view both their seasons as one big character arc rather than Stars as a progression of their arc in S. A big theme of Sailor Stars is putting faith in others, and not taking on everything alone. Usagi hides from her friends that she hasn't heard from Mamoru. The Starlights believe finding their princess is their burden to bear, and even when they find her, still refuse to work with the others, despite her constantly telling them to. And Haruka and Michiru still ultimately hold the belief that they're the only ones that can make tough decisions. That in the end, it'll always be them together against the rest of the world. It's no coincidence these six are the last Senshi left in the story. Galaxia herself in the anime is a legendary Senshi who ultimately went insane from trying to take on all the universe's evil into herself too. So even the villain is reinforcing the theme of the story. Stars as a season is thematically about condemning the you need to do everything alone attitude. And Haruka and Michiru have always been the characters that embodied that mindset. Even after having more faith in the younger girls, their reactions to their deaths is a non-malicious, this should never have been your fight in the first place. In Dying Stars, it finally gets through to the pair just how bad and destructive this mindset has been when even Usagi, the one who was willing to fight them to the very end and risked everything, the fate of the entire world, because she believed in the good in someone. Because she believed in the good in Hotaru, the girl they've now adopted as their daughter, and the girl they've now actually succeeded in killing to get to this point. Usagi, the one they desperately tried to convince to give up that childish belief in the inherent goodness of others, finally almost did because of them. It's the worst karma the characters could ever get. Their rash decisions and tendency to isolate themselves from others and to take on the world alone leads to the girl they always saw as too childishly optimistic, almost losing that optimism precisely because of all the stupid shit they've pulled. And they do pull some really stupid shit here. Their plan is full of holes, and while the show does kinda imply Hotaru and Setsuna realize Haruka and Michiru have some sort of plan, like I said, they don't fight back or finishing things when they could after all, and they tell Usagi to have faith, it's pretty clear that this wasn't a plan everyone made ahead of time. For one thing, Haruka and Michiru are absolutely not the two outers who things should have hinged on. Galaxia says she orchestrated Hotaru's reawakening, and this throws the group off their guard. But she also never says that Hotaru doing her wipe out both of them thing wouldn't work on her. She doesn't have a star seed, but we don't even know if Pharaoh 90 had one either, and Hotaru still wiped him out. Plus, Setsuna can freeze time. It kills her, but she can do it, and Haruka and Michiru have seen her do it. And the plan they have involves killing her anyway. The pair's plan leads to them sacrificing the two Senshi that are most likely to be able to kill Galaxia, and the only reason they wouldn't try their big attacks is because doing it involves sacrificing themselves. Which, again, Haruka and Michiru decide to do anyway. Setsuna could freeze time and then Hotaru finishes the job with her planetary self-destruct. Or fuck, they could have just cut Galaxia's head off after freezing time, and Hotaru wouldn't have even needed to be reborn. Also, they go through with their plan, even though Galaxia explains her bracelets let people survive without a starseed. And the bracelets she's holding when she says this are identical to the ones she's wearing. Her not having a starseed, or at the very least her being immune to their attack, isn't exactly something they couldn't have seen coming. Hell, even if Chibi Chibi wasn't her starseed, she could have just, fucking sealed it in a jar or something so no one would be able to take it. Haruka and Michiru make a stupid, short-sighted plan that to work requires the underestimation of everyone involved and the belief their partners couldn't make the sacrifice themselves. They end up playing the part so well, it ultimately costs them the faith of Usagi of all people. In the end, they're left with nothing they can do besides desperately try to hold hands one last time as they fade away. They've pushed everyone in their lives away to the point that, at the end, they have each other, but they don't have anyone else. And they realize that's not as good a feeling as we're looking all cool about how they'd be together in hell in the episode prior. To me, it's the perfect way for the pair to go out. It's all their flaws coming to a head, and most importantly, they learn from this. As they're dying, Haruka puts her faith in Seiya, which the respect even still shows in their last scene in the finale. And the Outer's last scene in general is a spin on that recurring bit of Haruka and Michiru alone in the car I mentioned. Because this time, the other members of their family are there with them. Throughout the series, in all of their appearances, the pair have constantly said all they need is each other. But now, when asked what she'd wish for by Hotaru, Michiru says she has everything she needs with her already, and is clearly not just referring to Haruka when she says that. I fully get why their second death is the embodiment of everything a lot of people don't like about the pair in the anime. But as I've constantly said, that's what makes it so effective to me. The two are flawed characters. They are kinda mean. Hell, in the Super S special, Michiru point blank says she'd let the world burn if it meant saving Haruka, which is the complete and total opposite of what the other Senshi stand for. And, that's interesting. They're an embodiment of the darker, real world. The more cynical adult perspective at odds with Sailor Moon, the character and the show's optimistic and idealistic worldview. But despite a lot of their actions being understandable, they can still be pretty harsh in their execution and sometimes short-sighted. They aren't inherently better than the characters they put down. They're just as flawed. So ultimately, the two are forced to face these flaws when their big, only we can bear this burden plan fails spectacularly and blows up in their face. And they grow from it. I love Haruka and Michiru. The pair adds so much to the series, and that's because of everything good and bad about them. Whether executed well or not is debatable, and I get why people feel that it wasn't. But they absolutely stand out amongst the cast because of it. They do some shitty things, make some seemingly self-centered or hypocritical plans. They're bad at working with the others, they create conflict a lot, but they're balanced by their endearing love for one another and a genuine desire to protect as many people as possible. There's nuance to them. They aren't perfectly black or white characters. And their second death, more than anything else in the franchise, embodies all of that to me.